The Dakota Building, a Gothic wonder nestled in the heart of New York's Upper West Side, holds secrets as thick as its stone walls. From the outside, it looms with an aura of elegance and mystery, a place where history meets legend. But behind its ornate facade lies a chilling tale that has whispered through the corridors for decades. Imagine stepping into a place where the echoes of the past blend with the shadows of the present, where every creak and groan of the building might just be a ghost reaching out from beyond. For those brave enough to listen, the Dakota offers a glimpse into the otherworldly, a place where the line between the living and the dead blurs. As we delve into the eerie hauntings of this iconic building, you might find yourself questioning what is real and what is just a ghost story. But beware, for the spirits of the Dakota are not mere figments of imagination. They are as real as the ground you stand on, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to cross their path. Are you ready to face the unknown and explore the supernatural secrets of the Dakota? Remember, some doors once opened can never be closed.
The night was cloaked in an unsettling silence, the kind that follows a dreadful event. I found myself standing outside the Dakota Building, the iconic New York City landmark, my breath visible in the cold air. The streetlights cast eerie shadows, adding to the chilling atmosphere. My heart raced as I stared at the very spot where John Lennon was tragically shot. The pavement seemed to hold the echoes of that fateful night, a place where tragedy and legend intertwined. I felt an inexplicable pull, like the whispers of ghosts beckoning me into the building's darkened corridors. The legendary hauntings were infamous, and as much as they terrified me, the mystery surrounding them drew me in. People had long spoken of the supernatural occurrences within these walls, tales of lingering spirits and shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. As I entered the building, the air grew colder, and the sense of dread intensified. The lobby, with its old-world charm, seemed oddly out of time, like a snapshot from the past. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, an unsettling sensation that prickled the back of my neck. The whispers grew louder, indistinct murmurs that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. I hesitated at the elevator, its ornate doors reflecting the dim light, and took a deep breath before stepping inside. The doors closed with a finality that made my stomach drop, trapping me in this eerie place. As the elevator ascended, I couldn't help but feel as though I was rising into another world, one where the line between the living and the dead blurred dangerously. Reaching the designated floor, I stepped out into a dimly lit hallway. The walls were adorned with old photographs, their subjects staring back at me with lifeless eyes. Each step I took echoed in the silence, a reminder of how alone I was, or perhaps how not alone. A child's laughter suddenly broke the stillness, sending a jolt of fear through me. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably there. The legend of the ghostly little girl played in my mind, a spirit said to roam these halls with an eerie innocence. My heart pounded as I moved towards the sound, the air thick with a sense of dread and the chilling realization that I was about to come face to face with the unknown. Then, as abruptly as it had started, the laughter stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence. I stood frozen, straining to hear any sign of movement. The atmosphere felt charged with an energy that was both ancient and malevolent. The shadows seemed to lengthen, creeping closer as if eager to swallow me whole. Just as I was about to turn back, a door at the end of the hallway creaked open, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. It was then that I saw her, a figure standing in the doorway, barely more than a shadow herself. She was small, with dark hair and an old-fashioned dress, her eyes locked onto mine. My breath hitched in my throat as a cold wave of fear washed over me. The stories were true, and here was the proof standing right before me in spectral form. Without warning, the figure vanished, leaving me in a darkness that felt suffocating. The hallway was now deathly quiet, the only sound my own ragged breathing. I stumbled backward, heart racing, the reality of what I had just seen sinking in. I needed to leave, to escape the clutches of whatever haunted this place. But as I turned to go, something caught my eye, a faint, glowing light emanating from another room down the hall. Compelled by a mix of terror and curiosity, I moved toward it, the air growing colder with each step. The light seemed to pulse, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. It was then that I noticed the temperature drop sharply, my breath visible in the dim light. The supernatural presence was almost palpable, a chilling reminder that I was treading on the edge of the unknown. As I entered the room, the source of the light became clear, a vintage record player, somehow operating on its own. The soft, haunting melody that filled the room was unmistakably a Beatles tune, a poignant reminder of John Lennon's tragic end. The room felt frozen in time, as if caught in a moment long past. I was overwhelmed by a mix of emotions, sadness, fear, and an inexplicable connection to the spirits that lingered here. The music seemed to weave through the air, carrying with it an eerie sense of nostalgia and loss. I stood transfixed, unable to tear myself away from the haunting scene. It was then that I felt a cold hand brush against my cheek, a touch so light it could have been imagined. But the chill that followed was all too real, seeping into my bones and making me shiver. I stumbled back, heart pounding, and looked around the room in panic. The shadows seemed to twist and warp, forming shapes that danced just out of the corner of my eye. It was as if the very walls were alive, breathing with a supernatural energy. The melody grew louder, almost oppressive, filling my mind with a cacophony of emotions. Just when I thought I couldn't take it any longer, the music abruptly stopped, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. I gasped for breath, the sudden quiet almost as terrifying as the noise had been. I had to get out of there, but my legs felt like lead, rooted to the spot by an unseen force. It was then that I heard the whispers again, this time clearer, as if spoken directly into my ear. They were unintelligible, but filled with a sense of urgency, a warning perhaps, or a plea for help. In a desperate attempt to regain control, I forced myself to move, stumbling toward the door. As I reached for the handle, a voice, clear and unmistakable, whispered my name. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. It was a voice I recognized, one I had not heard in years. The disbelief and terror hit me like a wave, threatening to drown me in their depths. I spun around, searching the shadows for any sign of the speaker, but there was nothing, just the empty room and the oppressive darkness. The voice called my name again, and this time there was no mistaking it. It was my friend's voice, the one who had died tragically in an accident years ago. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me reeling. How could this be happening? My mind raced, struggling to make sense of the impossible. The fear and confusion were overwhelming, and for a moment, I thought I might lose myself to the madness of it all. I stumbled out of the room, my heart racing, and made my way back to the lobby. The building seemed to pulse with a life of its own, every shadow hiding a potential threat. I needed to talk to someone, to make sense of what I had just experienced. I pulled out my phone and called my closest friend, the only person I could think of who might understand. She answered on the second ring, her voice a comforting anchor in the storm of my emotions. I tried to explain what had happened, the sightings, the voices, the overwhelming sense of fear. As I spoke, I could hear the disbelief in her voice, but she listened patiently, offering words of reassurance. She reminded me of the stories we had heard growing up, the legends of haunted places and restless spirits. Her calmness was a balm to my frayed nerves, helping to ground me in reality. Yet, as much as I wanted to believe it was all in my head, the memories of what I had seen and heard were too vivid, too real to dismiss. My friend suggested I leave the building, get some fresh air, and clear my head. It was good advice, but something inside me resisted. Despite the terror, there was a part of me that felt drawn to the mystery, the allure of the supernatural. The Dakota building was a place steeped in legend, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the brink of discovering something incredible, something that transcended the boundaries of the known world. My friend, sensing my hesitation, offered to come over and keep me company. The thought of not being alone was comforting, and I agreed, feeling a sliver of relief. We ended the call with her promise to be there soon, and I felt a bit more grounded, less adrift in the sea of fear and confusion. As I waited, I couldn't help but replay the events in my mind, trying to piece together the puzzle of what was happening. The fear was still there, but so was a burgeoning curiosity, a desire to understand the hauntings that seemed to grip this place. As I paced the lobby, I noticed a plaque on the wall, detailing the history of the building. It spoke of its construction in the late 1800s, its famous residents, and the many legends that surrounded it. The stories ranged from the tragic to the bizarre, each adding to the building's mystique. I couldn't help but feel a chill as I read about the supposed hauntings, tales of unexplained noises, ghostly apparitions, and other supernatural phenomena. The plaque mentioned the building's most famous ghost, John Lennon, whose presence had been reported by several residents. But it also spoke of other spirits, less well known but just as eerie. A little girl who played in the hallways, a woman in old-fashioned clothing who appeared in mirrors, and shadowy figures that seemed to move of their own accord. The stories were fascinating, but they also heightened my sense of dread, reminding me that I was standing in a place where the veil between the living and the dead was unusually thin. My friend arrived shortly after, her presence a welcome distraction from the oppressive atmosphere. We decided to explore the building together, a bold choice driven by equal parts curiosity and a desire to confront my fears. As we walked through the halls, the sense of being watched persisted, but it was less frightening with someone by my side. We spoke in hushed tones, sharing stories and theories about the supernatural. The conversation was oddly comforting, a way to make sense of the inexplicable. My friend, ever the skeptic, suggested that the things I had seen and heard could be attributed to the building's history, a kind of residual energy left behind by its many residents. I wasn't so sure. The experiences had felt too personal, too direct to be mere echoes of the past. As we explored, we came across an old, locked door at the end of a hallway. It seemed out of place, more modern than the rest of the building's architecture. My friend, always the adventurous one, suggested we try to open it. I hesitated, the memory of the ghostly encounters fresh in my mind. But curiosity won out, and we found a way to unlock the door. Inside, we discovered a small, hidden room, filled with old, dusty furniture and forgotten belongings. It was like stepping into a time capsule, a snapshot of a life left behind. As we looked around, we found a stack of old newspapers, their headlines detailing strange and tragic events connected to the building. One article in particular caught our attention. It spoke of a resident who had claimed to see the ghost of John Lennon, describing an encounter that was eerily similar to what I had experienced earlier. The resident had reported hearing a Beatles song playing from nowhere, followed by the appearance of a shadowy figure. The article was dated years ago, but the details were chillingly familiar. As we read on, the atmosphere in the room grew tense. The stories in the newspapers were more than just eerie coincidences. They felt like a tapestry of interconnected events, all pointing to something much larger at play. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. This building was not just haunted by the ghosts of its past. It was a nexus of supernatural activity, a place where the fabric of reality was thin enough to allow glimpses into other worlds. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. My friend, sensing my growing unease, suggested we leave the room and head back to the lobby. But as we turned to go, a cold wind swept through the room, slamming the door shut behind us. The suddenness of it made us both jump, and a sense of dread settled over us like a shroud. We were trapped, caught in a place where the boundaries of the known world had blurred dangerously. We frantically tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as the temperature in the room dropped even further, our breaths visible in the dim light. The air felt thick with a palpable energy, as if we were not alone. It was then that we heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible humming. It was a melody, one that I recognized immediately. My friend and I exchanged terrified glances. It was the same Beatles song that had played from the record player. The humming grew louder, filling the room with an eerie, otherworldly sound. We searched for the source, but there was nothing, just the oppressive darkness and the haunting melody. My friend, usually so brave, was visibly shaken. Her skepticism was cracking under the weight of the impossible. We huddled together, trying to make sense of what was happening. The melody continued, a spectral echo of a time long past, and with it came a sense of overwhelming sadness. As the humming reached a crescendo, the room was suddenly bathed in a cold, blue light. We looked around in shock, trying to find the source, but it seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. The light grew brighter, almost blinding, and in the center of the room, a figure began to materialize. It was a man, tall and thin, with long hair and round glasses. My heart stopped as I realized who it was. It was John Lennon, or at least something that looked like him. He stood there, looking at us with a sad, knowing expression. My friend gasped, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The figure seemed to shimmer, not entirely solid, like a projection or a memory given form. He raised a hand, and the humming stopped, replaced by a heavy silence. For a moment, we just stood there, staring at each other in shock and disbelief. The figure of Lennon looked so real, yet so ethereal, as if he were caught between two worlds. There was an undeniable presence about him, a charisma that was palpable even in this ghostly form. He looked around the room, his gaze lingering on the old newspapers and forgotten belongings, before finally resting on us. His eyes were filled with a deep sadness, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was trying to communicate something important. My friend and I were frozen in place, too scared to move or speak. The air was thick with tension, and the room seemed to hold its breath. The figure of Lennon opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, he reached out a hand toward us, a gesture that was both welcoming and imploring. In that moment, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. Fear, awe, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of connection. It was as if we were standing on the precipice of something profound, a truth that was just beyond our grasp. The figure's hand hung in the air, a silent invitation to step closer, to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. My friend squeezed my hand, grounding me in the reality of the situation. The figure began to fade, the blue light dimming along with it. The room grew darker, colder, as if the life was being drained out of it. We watched in stunned silence as the figure of John Lennon disappeared completely, leaving us alone in the darkness. The room was silent once more, the oppressive atmosphere lifting slightly. As we stood there, trying to process what had just happened, the door suddenly flew open, as if by some unseen force. We didn't need any more encouragement. We bolted from the room and ran down the hallway, not stopping until we reached the safety of the lobby. My heart was pounding, adrenaline coursing through my veins. My friend was pale, her eyes wide with shock. We looked at each other, unable to find the words to express what we had just experienced. The building seemed eerily quiet, as if it had returned to its normal state. But we knew better. The supernatural energy was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. We left the Dakota building that night, our minds racing with thoughts of what we had seen. The experience had shaken us to our cores, challenging everything we thought we knew about the world. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. The figure of John Lennon, the humming Beatles song, the cold, blue light. It all played over and over in my mind. I tried to rationalize it, to find a logical explanation, but nothing seemed to fit. My friend and I talked about it endlessly, dissecting every detail, but we were left with more questions than answers. The experience had changed us both, leaving us with a newfound respect for the mysteries of the unknown. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had been given a glimpse into another realm, a world where the past and present coexisted in a strange, ghostly harmony. Months later, I found myself back at the Dakota building, unable to resist the pull of its mysteries. I stood outside, staring up at the windows, wondering what other secrets the building held. The experience had left me with a deep sense of wonder and curiosity, a desire to explore the unknown. I had seen something that defied explanation, something that hinted at a world beyond our understanding. And while the experience had been terrifying, it had also been profoundly moving. It was a reminder that the world was full of mysteries, some of which we may never fully understand. But that night, as I stood outside the Dakota building, I felt a strange sense of peace. The encounter had been a brush with the supernatural, a meeting with the unknown, and it had changed me in ways I couldn't quite articulate. The fear had faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance of the mysteries that lay beyond the veil of reality.
As the tale of the Dakota's ghosts unfolds, it becomes clear that the building is not just a relic of New York's architectural past, but a living, breathing entity with stories to tell. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, the next time you find yourself strolling along the Upper West Side, take a moment to glance up at its looming facade. Do you feel a chill? Perhaps it's just the wind, or perhaps it's the spirits of the past, watching, waiting. Have you ever wondered if these hauntings are just urban legends, or do you believe there's truth behind the eerie whispers in the night? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. After all, who knows what other secrets the Dakota might hold? And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Stay tuned for more tales of terror, where the line between reality and the supernatural is hauntingly thin. Your next scare might just be one click away.